Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So brief homage to the Buddha, and gratitude and respect. So a little bit more continuing about the Mahāsāṅghika, one of the two branches that split off, and argued mainly on points of Vinaya. Some have been told that that's to do with the use of money. A couple of other things. They also said here that the arahants, the full enlightened ones, can, after they've become an arahant, fall away. So there's lots of sutras and suttas by them describing these fallible arahants that, you know, sort of like lose it after a while, to put it mildly, and to emphasize that point that they thought that arahants are fallible, partly to emphasize the purity and the majesty and the magnificence of the Buddha. So they thought it was an awful thing to say that arahants were fairly equal leveling to the Buddha. And I won't dwell too much on this about the Mahāsāṅghika. Relationship to Mahayana, very briefly. In the 6th century, Paramatha, a Buddhist monk from Ujjain in central India, wrote about a special affiliation of the Mahāsāṅghika school with the Mahayana tradition. So there have been links made there. He associates the initial composition and acceptance of Mahayana sutras with the Mahāsāṅghika branch of Buddhism, 200 years after the parinirvana of the Buddha. Yeah, much moved north. Okay, there is much to cover, and I don't want to get too lost in some of these hair-splitting or detailed accounts, which are a bit off our path. A little bit more about the author of the points of controversy, Moggaliputta. Quite interesting. We've just been discussing about Brahma realms. Here it says that in his last birth but one, he was a Brahma. He was actually a Brahma up there, dwelling, radiating light, called Tissa, and consented to be born in the world of men at the urgent request of the Arahants who held the second council, in order to prevent the downfall of the Buddha's religion. So this is not also unlike the story of the Sayadaw, who has the photographic memory of the 84,000 books. Mingun Sayadaw, who we've had a look at, he's in the Guinness Book of Records. They said the same thing about him, that he was dwelling in a Brahma realm. And people said, look, you know, we've got the council coming up, will you go? You've got the massive memory, you know, and he took birth and then did the memorization and so on. So similarly, so this was a lot to do also with King Asoka, who made the request for him here. Yeah, so again, the next section I'd like to talk about, but it's mainly the way that here Moggaliputta used these examinations of cross-questioning to find out where people had what they considered to be faulty views from the point of the view of the Theravada, and said that what you're saying is contradictory to the teaching, you have to drop it, and they refused to drop it, and so they were basically thrown out. Stories within stories here. There was a story where, I mean, King Asoka was very, very, very concerned actually, because he had sent a minister off to invite a few monks, and there was a mix-up in the communication where the minister had them executed. And when the news got back to Asoka, he was like, you know, terrified that he'd done something really wrong, and he wanted to know whether he was guilty in this line that looked like the vegetarian debate sort of thing, like this. So he examined Moggaliputta. And Moggaliputta was living up on a mountain in a cave at the time, and there was all sorts of things here about the way that the Moggaliputta came down, and the king took his hand, which in those days was actually, you could be executed on death for touching the king's right hand. Shows the sort of signs of the times. Let's have a look at the Brahmajala. the perfect net. Brahma, perfect, Jala, net. So it's divided into basically two kinds of views. Wrong views about self, ego. Atta means ego. So basic teaching is insight into anatta, insight to what is not ego. And loka, which is theories about the world and the universe. So when people say the Big Bang, the universe started with a Big Bang, this is something that's not about our inner emotional life and whether we are, which astrological sign we are and so on. It's actually talking about the physical universe much more. Although some of the views include people who think they are the universe. So we are the world, isn't it? The Michael Jackson song. So got lots of very mixed views that come up under quite complex thing to disentangle, which is one of the reasons we say we respect the Buddha for actually managing to have disentangled all this knot of tangles. One way of dividing them up is into annihilationism, and the other one into eternalism. So this is a very common thing. Sasata Ditti, which is eternalism, various forms of what is eternal and what isn't eternal, and annihilationism, that there's an end point and there's nothing after that point, whether it's death or it's the destruction of the world or doom or whatever it is. So we're going to look at a few views here that stem from atta. So one is that the physical body is the self. This is one type of view. So other people have got a different kind of view, that the body is a sort of shadow soul around or with or by or on account of the body, but it's not actually the body. There's another one. Two views there. So one is your kind of, who's the senator of California? Arnold Schwarzenegger, kind of like, I am the body, sort of like super being, sort of, but definitely highly identified with them as the body. And the other one is shadow soul. So someone says, how old are you? And you say, I'm 23. You say, haha, what's 23? And you say, I am. So the shadow soul is there, the thing which has the properties. The other thing, like an oversoul, so it's just this sort of, the ego depends on the body. I think that's that one, isn't it? Yeah, so the ego depends on the body. And another way is to say that the ego is inside the body. Same shape. And in this case, like a hand in a glove, it's the same shape. And when the body dies, this other thing goes off, but it looks exactly the same. It's like a hologram of that same thing. So then there's another type, which is a tiny atta, a tiny ego. Either they say it's in the heart, and that's where I dwell, in my little cave with a little candle, like a little tiny flame, or in the seat of consciousness in the brain, in there, that's where I am, and so on. Yeah, you've probably heard of these, or dwelling within the atom, or within the nucleus, or within the DNA. So there's loads of variations of those, even within these basic categorization. But this categorization's there, even though there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, there's 5 there, but basically those can be compressed into 4 if the last 2 are compressed. Those 4 views can get applied. Oh, there's another one. You have a sort of butterfly spirit that enters and leaves the body. It's just, you can't put your finger on it, but I just know that it comes and goes and it comes and goes. But it's not specified. So, an introduction. So you've got a few views there. So those are ego beliefs regarding the body and the mind. Then you've got ego beliefs of the same style of thing, but they're not taking the body, physical body, as their target. They're taking the feelings. So it's just the emotional plane. So you're talking about anger, you're talking about jealousy, you're talking about moods, you're talking about sadness, you're talking about joy, you're talking about love, you're talking about ecstasy, you're talking about any of those things. So firstly, say, it is I who feels the pain. I am the one who feels the pleasure, but that's the I that is doing that feeling. Secondly, it's I who owns the pain, who owns the pleasure. It's my pain, my pleasure. There's something that's doing that owning. Thirdly, the feelings depend on me. So I cause the feelings happen. I cause the pain. I cause the pleasure. I. do the causing. And the other one is that I exist depending on the feelings. So the pain and the pleasure creates me. I hurt, therefore I am, type of thing. So that's on feelings. So actually what we're doing is going through the 5 aggregates. The first 4 depended all on the body. These ones depend all on the feelings. So we're going through the 5 aggregates. Third one is perceptions, sanya. It is I who perceives. It is I who owns the perceptions. The perceptions depend on me. I cause the perceptions. Or I exist depending on the perceptions. I think, therefore I am, kind of. The perceptions cause me. I see orangeness, or I see a wall, therefore I'm there. Then the mind states. So these are things like anger and desire and doubt and restlessness and joy of the kind of mind state kind. It is I who intends as I who's doubting. It is I who owns the mind states, secondly. Or the mind states depend on me. I cause the mind states. I make the anger. Or I exist depending, I know there's anger there, therefore I'm there. So, again. Awareness of the 6 sense doors. So, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching and thinking. It is I who sees, I who thinks. It's interesting, a funny one when Nagasena, the king asked him about this, King Milinda, and he says, is there an I who hears and sees? And he says, what sort of thing? He says, well, like a being inside who can see through. And he says, well, if he could see through the eyes, could he also see through the ear as well? Like a little hole that he looks out of. Like that. Anyway, so is I who hears, sees all things. Is I who owns the sights and thoughts, etc. Same sort of things, owner. Or the sounds and the smells depend on me. I cause the thought and the hearing. Therefore, I cause it. Or I happen. I'm the hearer. I'm the taster. It was tasting, so I know I exist. So the tasting caused me, or sustains me, if you like. So then we got the 5 aggregates: body, feelings, perception, mental states, and 6 sense doors. 4 views for each. 20 kinds of beliefs. Alright? So those are Atta Ditti and Sakaya Ditti types, self or personality views. And then this is from Saleka Sutta, also by Mahāsāṅghika, which I've introduced before, where he points out those, he points out nice and clearly in there. But he also says that ordinary worldly people just usually have one of those. They're very common. The only difference being some are dominated by it and some don't really hold fast to it. Just temporarily is there, temporarily not. For some people it's massive. There is a big deal for them that they are the body, and they are the one who's seeing. They are very, very fiercely held views, and then they can cause them great trouble. So back here to our central point of the perfect net, Loka, the universe, or the universal self. Because when you say, I am one with everything, there's a big ego that's gone out and identifies with the country, with the planet, us, my forest, or my sky. So there's also variations on this. So 8 main local views are pointed out in the Brahmajala Sutta. 1, the world is indestructible, it's eternal. That's as far as the view goes. Or 2, that all is like life until death, and then it all stops. But they're not thinking about the body, they're just talking about experience and the work and things going on, just not more beyond that, like a film that just goes and then stops. And a few more. 3, there's partly eternal and partly impermanent. We just looked at that one, which is the eternal creator plus temporary beings. 4th one, that the world is neither eternal nor non-eternal. It's a kind of meaningless break. But it's a standpoint that some people take just to avoid putting themselves in a point in a discussion, kind of eel wriggling. They don't say it's either. 5thly, that the world is finite shaped. So they get, you see people like this and they say that it's saddle shaped, it's donut shaped. They say it's round, They say it's flat like a piece of tagliatelle, like a great big landing strip of an airport. So There are scientists who get into this. I've seen debates on this. 6, the universe is infinitely huge in size. Infinitely huge in size. Just keeps going on and on and on. Some say it's like a figure of 8. So another one, the 7th one, is the world of the universe or the self is combined, both infinite and finite. So it's like one of the earlier ones, God and souls. But it's not talking about a bit similar to the 3rd one. 8th one, that it's neither infinite nor is it finite. So another one is eel wriggling ones. So from the past you've got 18 views. Eternal ones, we've already done those ones, saying that basically I was, so they remember back. Then secondly, that they talk about more than that. They say that Earth and the universe were the 10 formations. It came together for 10 times. This is more to do also people who have siddhis where they can remember actually past lives as well. For 10 or 40 formations, so even more, so further back. But they're basically looking into the deep past. So in the same way, someone might look into the sort of like deep ocean trench, and they might find evidence of life going back 5,000 years. And so same way they'll go, yes. Deep time is that long, that I am that long. They might look back, or people doing evolutionary studies and so on. Semi-eternal, 4 causes. 1, that you fall karmically via heaven, but you see Brahma on the way. Secondly, you fall directly to the human plane from the angelic plane. We talked about these earlier. The indulgence fall. Another one, thirdly, they fall by jealousy. Jealous gods fall. And then also that you just have 6 sense doors and experience which change, but not the mind. This is another model of having the semi-eternal thing. We say the mind is eternal, but the senses are just temporary, something like a soul, which is permanent. But the 6 senses and all other experience, that's just temporary. Then you have about the universe. So this is a bit of a revision in a way. One, that it's infinite, one, that it's limited. So if you do meditation where you visualize 360 degrees around, that's limited universe. And then if you take that limitation away, you just consider that in every direction, space is infinite. In every direction, this leads to that view, and you don't go any further than that. Just say that's all there is. Thirdly, that it's horizontally limited. You can see as far as the horizon, but when you meditate, you go up into heavenly, which is infinite. So these 2 things are combined into a view. Someone says that's reality. Reality is, look, there it is. You can see it, but when you meditate, you can go up and down forever into infinite space. And then you say it's neither like that, nor is it neither like this, and then people just squabble on this sort of from this standpoint. That's using kasinas and also scientific reasoning, the same like Albert Einstein and the people who argued about the steady state and the Big Bang forever. They went on arguing between them, and it was a huge debate. Whole universities built up around it, and they squabble about what's the reality of that. Is it a time and eternal loop that goes round, or not? Or is it just a big bang that just starts from nowhere and then it just keeps going? So time is created. People argue about these things. The types of evasion, when people squiggle, they squiggle and wriggle out due to fear or hatred. One, of making a false claim. Some people are frightened of the punishment of God, so they say, I daren't say so, I don't know, if I say there's no soul, I might get sent to hell. They've been told, daren't say that God doesn't exist or you go to hell forever. So they daren't say anything just due to fear or hatred of making a false claim. Secondly, due to fear and hate and attachment. So they avoid it just because they're so full of attachment. They might have a fear and hatred of debating, so they don't like to get into the discussion in the first place, just because they don't like the sound of arguments, and they wish everyone would just be peaceful and quiet and not discuss things like this. Or, fourthly, they are fear of losing face and admitting ignorance. When it finally comes out, they go, I used to think that everything was all one. Why? Now they're embarrassed, because they've lost face, and admit that actually the way that they've been holding on to looks like it fits one of these things. It might be wrong. So, and then other people say there's no causes at all. So like that there's no causes. Some people say no, there is cause. And some people no, there isn't any cause. So some people get this by saying that I didn't exist, and now I exist. So the ego had no cause, it just appeared out of nowhere. Nothing caused it at all. So that's one way. Another way is basing on theory, like astrology or logic or conceptual thinking, saying that there's no causes. Not astrology, because that's a cause. But they just bring this theories out of nowhere, just on mental reasoning. So those are 18 past views. Now briefly I'll go through these, the 44 beliefs on the future. I'll try and go quite quickly through. So these are usually based on the ego's existence after death, in many cases. So these views, 35 to 42, they talk about the ego, or the soul, or the self, or the spirit, whichever way name you want to call it, being happily and healthily surviving death, with perception working, with, firstly, a form, and that form is the ego, is the soul. Or it's formless, but that formlessness is the soul, if you like. So enter this realm, you become one with everything in every direction. It doesn't actually have any form or colour. Thirdly, that it has both form and formlessness. And then it neither has form or formlessness somehow. You just become gravity or become something that doesn't have either of those things. Fifthly, that the soul after death is finite. And then two, that it's infinite. That it's both finite and infinite, and that it's neither. And then, slightly similar to that one, this is one with perception working, and this one with perception neither working, nor not working. It's even more complicated. And then it applies the same criteria. So I won't go there, I think it will get a bit boring if you just keep repeating it. So then there are 7 views which they are annihilationist views, that is about destruction, about the soul or the self is destroyed, but what is the soul? So they differ about what it is that's destroyed. So the view 51, that the self is the body. So the self is the body literally means that everything that's there is the self. So when death comes of the physical body, the self dies with it. So the self made by the mother and the father, and that's what is meant by it. Secondly, that there's the soul plus 6 sense doors, and that is the soul. And this is the soul that's going to get annihilated. And then 53, that the soul is identical to the body, like the hand in glove. 54, that the soul is the same as infinite space. That's what it is, and that soul is going to get annihilated. 55, that the soul is the same as the awareness of infinite space. So these are more jhana related when you practice and you do, because you know kasinas just in every direction, and you go, and you keep seeing that, but is that going to last forever, or is that going to stop? And then the awareness of that meditation, that they say that's the soul, and that's the thing that's going to get annihilated. Therefore, there's going to be no reconnection after death. Whereas the Theravada point is always reconnection after death. So soul is the sphere of nothingness, another 7th jhana. And the soul knows neither perception nor non-perception. Complicated words, a bit difficult to describe it, and also related just to doing jhana meditation. But they all view that the soul or the self as real, and that they can see it, and they're absolutely sure about it. They've experienced it, they're very proud, and super cool, but you can't see it. I know what I'm talking about, and I'm on top of things, and I can't see it, but that soul will die at death and is annihilated. So it's that kind of thing, like a spirit and a soul that only the person themselves knows, but you can't see it, and I can't explain it, you just wouldn't understand it, sort of thing. It's very super inflated type views often go with that. So just recap, so you've got the 7 views which are annihilationist ones, and the last ones, going up to 62 view, these talk about Nibbana being in the here and now wrongly. How do they talk about Nibbana being in the here and now? 58, they believe Nibbana is like sensory joy. So someone who just hears music and they go, that's Nibbana. They believe that sort of like Nibbana has the quality of crashing waves, that it's just in the present moment, and it's sort of an ecstatic, joyful, present, pleasurable, present moment. And that is the meaning of Nibbana. So they equate the two things together. So they call that's a different kind of here and now annihilation view, because the present moment is always being annihilated. And 59, that it's just Nibbana is just like first jhana, or other people say they get second jhana and they say that's what Nibbana is like, wrongly. Third jhana and fourth jhana are just the same. It's just they think Nibbana is that, so they can experience third jhana and just think that they've already attained enlightenment, wrongly. Good, so back to our fledgling school. Here it is, the Theravada. So, as it grows, arguments happen and differences of opinion happen with the Vajjiputikas, Mahāsāṅghikas and Mahāsāṅghika. These are the three main troublemakers, and the points of view we're going to have a bit of a look at now. So Vajjiputikas say there is an existing personal ego identity. And secondly, together with the Mahāsāṅghikas, they say that an arahant may fall away. Fall away means that later they start getting desire, they start getting hatred, they start getting anger, they start getting strong ego, get ramped up with jealousy and so on like that. So, is that an arahant? So they say so. He's an arahant, but he's just fallen away. So it's like, but the Theravada is saying, no, once you're an arahant, you never have those things ever again, they don't return. An arahant is fully enlightened, and that has been removed. So here we go, look at the views. Another school, Mahāsāṅghika, they have 8 points that they go into, that they debate on and they disagree about. The first one is a little bit difficult to explain, but it's like in the Theravada you have the eightfold: right livelihood, right speech, and right action. Now, like right livelihood, cooking in a vegetarian restaurant, and wholesome action, no one doing anyone harm. There it is. But what they're saying is that that's physical, whereas, and like speech, they're saying, well, it involves your material body, so it's not really, doesn't really count as a spiritual path, because it's physical. So that's what they're saying. They're saying, yeah, right concentration, yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, right energy, that's right part of it. Right mindfulness, yeah. Right views, yeah. And right aim, they're all right because they're all spiritual qualities, but you can't include such things as like whether you're a policeman or not, or whether you deal with drugs or not. You can't include that because it's a physical thing done with the physical body. That was the point that they were talking about. So they say it's a 5-fold path. Pretty nerdy really, but but they make this distinction that if something is material, it's not spiritual. Secondly, a peculiar one, they say that there's not one Nibbana, there's two for some reason. I don't know what the distinction is, I'll have to look at it. And they say that jhanas transition immediately, don't ask me again. They say that dependent origination links are not conditioned. This is a very important one. So like, dependent origination is if you have ignorance in your mind, the next state of mind will immediately be associating with it will be unwholesome. If you have ignorance in your mind, hatred will be there, or desire, or one of the other ones, which are agitative minds. But they say that's not the case, is that the dependent links are not conditioned. So it's very difficult to know how you work with a teaching that's like that, because with the mindfulness, 4 foundations of mindfulness, because things are conditioned, you can change the conditions. Because conditions, one thing leads to another, we can interfere with the loop of pain, with the loop of views, with the loop of struggle, with the loop of dukkha as well. So we can interfere with it and therefore change the conditioning through the eightfold path. But they're saying they're not conditioned, so how do you break it? That's the difficulty. They say that space is unconditioned. So the Theravada is saying that the only thing that is unconditioned is Nirvana. So but by them saying that space, even this is space, even what's here is space, they're saying that's unconditioned. They're saying well, there is something that's called Nirvana, and there's something that's called space, and that's not the same thing. But space, we're saying that basically space is a material thing, even air is a material thing. So by them saying that space is unconditioned, they're getting involved by changing the rules there, and that will have consequences on people's attitude. Space is conditioned by objects. Think between that. Distance. The acts of intimation are karma. So that's like, if I go to turn off the light switch, but I turn around, someone there might think, hey, you just turned your face to me. That's rude. So was it rude, or was I just intending to make the room lighter? Was it acts of intimation, incidental actions, as far as I understand it. and that all matter is of moral import. That's a heavy thing to say, that all matter, so not only our physical body but all the matter around, carries karma. The colour of this wall, where this was placed, everything carries karma. That's a huge thing to say. So it affects things, whereas with the knowledge that intentions cause karma, that your mind makes karma, not the matter, that's what they're getting into. Big thing there. They say that 5 faculties, mindfulness, concentration and energy, and wisdom, and faith, balancing. That's the 5 faculties. They say that these are not for non-monastics. They say that only people in the robes and in monasteries meditating ought to be able to work with these. Whereas the Theravada said, no, anyone can do that. Anyone can work with those and increase their wisdom and their faith. Why not? So those are the kind of differences. And they were also shared by this other one, Mahāsāṅghika. The Mahāsāṅghika has had these load of points there. I'll go through them quick as I can. But the Theravādas reported them as saying that they had confused ideas about what is the meaning of sense, karma and action. Confused ideas about the path and morals. They were saying that one can act by the mind of another. Someone can sit there and go, I'm going to control Robin to do this, and the people who act by remote control. And Terra said, no, it doesn't work like that. And they were saying also that mind and morals are distinct, 2 totally different things. What's that? Mind and the moral, the way that morals, decision making and intention is one of the core facilities of the mind. So, again, pretty weird view. The acts which are not moral must be amoral. So it's like you've always got to be doing something that's good. Yeah, that's like, no, I mean, that would drive you nuts. That would drive you you'd be a very irritating person to be around if you thought that absolutely every time you blinked, that every blink has to be a good blink. It would drive you mad, isn't it? And it's basically saying that if you don't do it like that, it's an immoral action. So you're just like constantly creating bad karma all the time, just by shuffling your foot or anything like coughing or sniffing. The Idi can cause long life. The development of supernatural powers can cause long life. Taoists believe that. Excuse me. Self-restraint, like that was immoral. Self-restraint wasn't it? Just because I went forward. Self-restraint is not morally effective. That's not a good thing to think, because self-restraint is very important and it can develop good moral power. Moral and immoral can be consecutive immediately, whereas it's a gradual change according to Theravada, I believe, according to that. That you have a good consciousness, wholesome consciousness, and it can gradually decay and it can gradually be improved, but not immediately one after another. One of the Abhidhamma points, I think. But Buddhists can suspend any natural law. So that's a bit much. Not any natural law. Like the Buddha wouldn't be able to stop the planet from turning round. Just one off the top of my head. That an arahant does not age and die just like everyone else, whereas according to the Theravada they do. Their mind has got Nirvana, they're completely done, and their body just continues to age like everyone else's, and even illness and so on, and then they die. But the body just follows its regular normal process. It's the mind that's got enlightenment, not the body. And they say that the Buddha, that's not, I won't go into too deep because there's other things to do. Acts of intimation are moral, same thing. The latent bias is unmoral. Yeah. There are kind of sleeping hatreds, sleeping desires, and sleeping subconscious ego conceits. And they're saying that those are in themselves always causing bad karma. It's quite a big statement to make as well. Yeah. Kind of subjects that are covered, points of controversy about the Buddha. Also, when I was making these ones, it was getting darker at night, so this might get gradually darker. No, it's not too bad. So, one was his everyday usage, like I was saying about speech. They were saying that every time he talked about Nibbana meditation, did he sort of put on a voice that was really airy, and the rest of the time he sort of just spoke like an average bloke, or what? So what was his everyday usage of behaviour like? About his powers, about how he got enlightened, Was it through Bodhi or not? Was it through Bodhisattva vows or not? A couple of those kind of things. The marks that he had, these 32 marks on his body, which were marks of an enlightened man, debates about those. Gifts to him brought a blessing or not? Did he visit the earth only as an illusion? Did he feel compassion? Was everything of him fragrant? Did he teach by proxy, this sort of same holographic nature only? Could he work wonders against nature? How do Buddhas differ? Like Kassapa, but there were 28 previous Buddhas, and how do they differ to each other? And do Buddhas dwell in all heavens pervading? I think the meaning of that is that because there are simultaneously at any one point in time these other heavens with other beings go on, are they simultaneously dwelling in those places as well as on the earth simultaneously? That's the sort of question. And then, do bodhisattvas design their own suffering? Are bodhisattvas assured pre-last birth? So there they are in that Mahabrahma realm, and they're going to go down onto the earth and do their bodhisattva practices and then aim for enlightenment. But is that assured, or is it just a bit of a gamble that they think with sheer determination they will be able to? And the tests that they are going to have, the sufferings, have they already chosen what they are ahead, or do they just see what turns up and then play it by ear? So that's the kind of question. So there they are in the book as you see them. So that's just one of the group's subjects. So of the Buddha, for example, just to show you roughly how the book works and how it tackles their subjects. That's when I was talking about the feelings, the person, is the person in the feelings? Is the person apart from feelings? Is feeling in the person? So that's the way, just to show you that fourfold description there. Other subjects that are covered here. Path of assurance is when a person has attained stream entry, they are basically said to be on the path of assurance. They only have 7 more lifetimes left, and they won't fall into the condition of a hell realm, or a hungry ghost realm, or the demon realm, and so on. About the limits of various things. Like to what extent an adept is someone who's in training, the knowledge of an adept. To what extent insight into the future can happen. The dependent origination. So these are all considered worthy of discussion by lofty and weighty groups of monks and nuns. So it shows you, it's quite good to see the scope that's considered worth scoping, for want of a better description. Quite heavy though, it's Victorian. And often I'm not sure how developed in meditation the translators were. So that can affect it as well, that they're simply sort of translating from the text rather than their own experience. Not much, but... United resolve means, some people have seen them in Burma, for example. You get like a couple will go to a Buddha Rupa and holding each other, say like, we wish to have a baby girl. They're united resolve, does this actually work? Or you get a group of 10 people all sit together and with one mind make a wish. So this is united resolve. I guess some of the kind of things. Yeah. Quite important, and if you're serious about practicing Buddhism, to aim to become an arahant, certainly in Theravada, it's realisable, it's doable. Very few people can't do it, And so the nature of actual what an arahant become, what life is like for them, it's worth investigating if we're serious about being able to attain the ending of suffering. And if people don't attain it, their life will continue to go on and be a roller coaster and can fall into severe pain and distress as well. So there are big things at stake with some of these questions. Therefore they're worthy of investigation. But, not easy reading. It's not sort of comfortable territory. It's out of the comfort zone. It takes quite a while to plough through it. I think probably said enough for now with this. We could look at doing possibly guided meditation. There's a couple of little things before we go on to do that. Look at this. I know Patrick's interested in this kind of thing. And Robin asked about this. So just to have a look at this, the medicine Buddha. I'm not a great authority on this, coming from a Theravada background, but quite good to look at varieties of Buddhisms and Buddhist practice, just to take it on. There's another one as well. One was the medicine Buddha, and another one was the podgy, roly-poly, fat Buddha that you see. Partly here in the Philippines, because it's all fairly new, it's to sort of distinguish what from what and how it fits with the Theravada and where it comes from. So as you can see, this one's come through Chinese Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism. Medicine master and king of Lapi Lazuli light is the Buddha of healing and medicine in Mahayana Buddhism, commonly referred to as the medicine Buddha. Described as a doctor who cures suffering using the medicine of his teachings is very important. So it's the wisdom that does the healing. A bodhisattva, symbolizing the light of the sun and light of the moon, attended by two bodhisattvas, Surya Prabha, Chandra Prabha, having taken 12 vows to illuminate countless realms, to awaken the minds of sentient beings through his light of the Lazuli, provide sentient beings whatever materials they need, correct heretical views, inspiring beings towards the path, help beings follow moral precepts, heal beings with deformities, illness, etc., help relieve destitute and sick, help women who wish to be reborn as men achieve their desired rebirth, to help heal mental afflictions and delusions,
a whole new level.
To help oppressed be free from suffering, to help clothe who are destitute and suffering from cold and so on. So what's the origin of that with the... a little bit about it. It looks like something that's been picked up on the way around quite a lot. And there was also, look at, just at a quick scan of this fat Buddha, because you see sort of a bit of everything, and people sort of want to know how does it fit in with the Theravada. I remember seeing Ajahn Brahm talking about the chubby Buddha, or it's not actually a Buddha, but the sort of chubby, Chinese figure. And he was saying, like, if anyone comes up to me and wants to rub my tummy, they can't. Because there was this kind of, here we go, this is a fat Buddha, sort of belief that rubbing the tummy makes you rich, I think it was. There we go. But just like to put the record straight then, while we're on this subject, Budai, or Putai, or Hotai in Japanese, a Chinese folkloric deity. His name means cloth sack and comes from the bag that is conventionally depicted as carrying. He's usually identified with or an incarnation of Maitreya, so much that the Buddha image is one of the main forms in which Maitreya is depicted in East Asia. He's almost always shown smiling or laughing, hence his nickname in Chinese, the Laughing Buddha. Many Westerners confuse Buddha with Gautama Buddha. So this is the important point that we need to sort of get a bit clearer on, is like, what's going on with that? Because you often see this elegant, Buddha who's like enormously tall, with a great aquiline nose and great beautiful features, and then this sort of like fat figure, like obese, lolling around, like just finished his 4-pack of lager and fish and chips and sort of underneath with big roly-poly laughter and everything. So what's that about? Buddhist tradition depicts as an obese, bald man wearing a robe and wearing or otherwise carrying prayer beads. He carries his few possessions in a cloth sack, being poor but content. He is often depicted entertaining or being followed by adoring children. His figure appears through Chinese culture as a representation of contentment. His image graces many temples, restaurants and businesses. History. Buddha was an eccentric Chan monk, according to Chinese history, who lived in China during the later Liang dynasty. He was a native of Fengguan. His Buddhist name was Kuiji. Ritri promised this. He was considered a man of good and loving character. The term Buddha means one who is awake, connoting one who is awakened into enlightenment. Over the history of Buddhism, there have been several notable figures. I will skip this bit. Buddha is often conflated with, or simply replaces, the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, in spite of the distinct visual differences in how each has been depicted. In Indian, Nepal and throughout Southeast Asia, Gautama is commonly depicted as being tall and slender in appearance, in contrast in China, those areas to which Chinese cultural influence has spread, like Malaysia. The depiction of Buddha, who lived during the 10th century CE, is considered short and round. And then there's an important bit about conflation with other religious figures. This in Angida Arhat, one of the original 18 Arhats of Buddhism. According to legend, Angida was a talented Indian snake catcher whose aim was to catch venomous snakes to prevent them from biting passers-by. Angida would also remove the snake's venomous fangs and release them. Due to his kindness, he was able to attain Bodhi. And then this next bit, in Thailand, after hearing this, when I was very first went into a temple in the first few days, way back. In Thailand, Buddha is sometimes confused with another similar monk widely respected in Thailand, Prasankajai or Sankachai. Prasankachai, a Thai rendering of Mahākachana, was a Buddhist arahat during the time of the Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha praised Prasankachai for his excellence in explaining sophisticated Dhamma in an easily and correctly understandable manner. Prasankajai also composed the Madhupindika Sutra. One tale of the Thai folklore relates that he was so handsome that once even a man wanted him for a wife. There you go.
It's too handsome.
To avoid a similar situation, Prasankachai decided to transform himself into a fat monk. So if I walk in here like weighing 25 stone one day, you know exactly what's happening. I've been proposed to. Another tale says he was so attractive that angels and men often compared him with the Buddha, and he considered this inappropriate, so he disguised himself in an unpleasantly fat body. Although both Buddha and Prasankajai may be found in both Thai and Chinese temples, Prasankajai is found more often in Thai temples. Yeah? So a little bit clearer, and no feathers ruffled. Good. So I think we've covered quite a lot of ground there. What I'm going to do, so if we maybe get ready to do a transition to do meditation, what I'll do is I'll show the kasinas.
Yes.
There's a slide. Maybe we'll pause so we do it as a complete all in one. I'll show the kasinas on slides so that you've got that fresh in your memory. And then we'll do a guided meditation. Through kasinas, and then switch to vipassana. So kasinas make you calm and quiet, hopefully. That's the aim of it if they're practiced well enough. And the other one is to more dissolve the ego and get used to seeing dissolvedness as much as possible. Dissolvedness is another word for impermanence. If everything is dissolving and impermanent, then it's difficult to see how that can be 100% satisfactory, because everything that you put on it as satisfaction will dissolve too. And that you can't control that in the same way that you're controlling other things. therefore it's has all of this, like you can't own it, you can't find yourself in it, you can't find an ego in it, or of it, or over it, or under it, or next to it. All those things that we just looked at. Okay, so maybe we take a pause on that. Good, that's good.